On the show tonight on India Matters, outwitted in part by Iranian drones, the United States has done virtually the unthinkable in this war. They have turned to Ukraine, Zelensky for help. Trump has basically told Zelensky, you figured out how to handle Iranian drones. Can you help us do the same thing? A week into this battle, what are the air power lessons? In just a moment from now, I'll be joined live and exclusive by Air Chief Marshal B.S. Dhanoa, who was the Indian Air Force chief during the Balakot airstrikes. He's speaking out for the first time in the middle of an unprecedented and historic air battle. Let's get started with the breaking news tonight. 1 week into the Middle East war, with Iran under siege, there appears to be no end to the precision aerial bombardment of Iran. The precision airstrikes continue unabated. In fact, they've actually scaled up. If you look at the sheer numbers, 1 week in, US and Israel have ramped up the Air Force offensive. The Indian Air Force is watching all of this very, very closely. Balakot Air Force Chief has decided to speak out, and first an exclusive here on NDTV. This is a story that is now 1 week into this entire war, and we are awaiting more of an official. Joining me live for his first views, his first words on this battle that began exactly 1 week ago, is Air Chief Marshal Birender Singh Dhanoa. He has been the Chief of the Air Staff of the Indian Air Force and also most famously Chief at the time of the Balakot airstrikes. He's been a combat pilot and he has led India in combat operations. Air Chief Dhanoa, good evening, sir. Thank you very much for your time here on NDTV, and it's good to have you spend some time with us 1 week into this war that has been defined largely by a display of air power by the US, by Israel, also by Iran and the allied countries in that region. I'd like to start by asking you to give us your opening thoughts. 1 week into this battle, you've been looking obviously very closely at how things have been playing out. Your thoughts at this time of what's happening in the Middle East, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, Shiv. Nice to be with you. Yes, like everybody who's an enthusiast of air power, I have also been following the conflict. And of course, it is one-sided, in which the Americans have definitely very superior technology. And it seems that they have grounded the Iranian Air Force, as well as they have nearly sunk the entire Iranian Navy. So the first lesson that comes out is that, see, if you don't dominate the air, you cannot you will not win either the air battle or the naval battle. But yes, land is a different kettle of fish. No, the Americans were owning the air in Vietnam, but they couldn't defeat them on the land. So the first fact is this. The second is that, like the video you are just showing, even if you are inside blast pens, if the enemy has got preponderance in the air, that he can put precision weapons through your roof, and if you have a hardened aircraft shelter, he'll put 2 weapons through the same hole. So there is no way by which your Air Force will survive. So you have to have the air capability to challenge an adversarial Air Force, otherwise you will not survive.
Air Chief Dhanoa, what stands out to you in the air battle so far? It began with precision strikes. Obviously, the effort was made to completely dominate and destroy Iran's air defenses. How successful do you think the Americans and the Israelis have been so far?
As far as Iranian air defenses are concerned, I think they have been fairly successful. So what Iranians are responding to is through UAVs and drones and ballistic missiles. So this is a poor man's answer, because they cannot get their aircraft airborne. And with the lack of an aircraft, they don't carry any weight of attack. Yes, some drones have been able to get through. The drones have been able to overwhelm the defenses of the Gulf countries as well as the US. And some of them have been able to get through. And same goes with the ballistic missile. But you can't get an outcome out of that. It is a nuisance value. You can't get an outcome out of that. That is the main reason that they have been successful to some extent, but Americans are not going to bow down because of the drone strikes.
What is your assessment of how Iran has fought back, sir? Is this the best they could have done? This is a country that's been under sanctions. They've not really had access to, modern aircraft technology in that sense. With everything that you've seen so far, how do you think they've done?
No, you have to give it to the Iranians, quite creditable on their part, that they realize what are their weaknesses, because they don't have access to technology. If you don't have access to technology, you can't get world-class aircraft, world-class weapon systems. Even if you try and make your own, there are a lot of subsystems that you need to import. So they have been denied all that. So they decided to go on the way of having cheaper drones and try and overwhelm the enemy. And basically the only deterrent that the world has seen that works against the Americans is body bags. If you can create a lot of body bags, the Americans will withdraw. This is exactly what happened when that Beirut military barracks were hit in, I think, 82 or 83 or something. The 300 soldiers got killed and the Americans withdrew. So this is I think the strategy of the Iranians is very clear, is to how to create multiple American body bags so that the Americans feel the pinch. The people at home feel the pinch, and they'll put pressure on Trump to get out of this war.
Because so far the body bags number 6, and all of these were I'm guessing in Kuwait itself, and this was probably a drone or a missile that hit the base in Kuwait. But Iran has also been using some of its longer range weapons to hit the Gulf countries. What did you think of that strategy, sir?
You see, all these countries, which had become advanced weapon systems, they gave up on what we call the air defense gun. So, you see how many drones were used in Op Sindoor. And what kind of damage did they do to us? Just think about it. How come they couldn't do any damage to us? Because we still have our AD guns. And the AD guns took a big toll on the Pakistani drones. And basic things like jamming, the drone sits down. I mean, the cheaper drones. So with these two things, we were able to, neutralize all the Pakistani drones. They couldn't do any damage on Indian installations. And plus the warhead is very small, 35 kg, at best 90 odd kgs. Single aircraft bomb is 500 kgs. Even the Russians have been using drones against the Ukrainian military grid. Electricity grid. But 90 kg warhead, it'll go off for a few days, it'll come back again. One Su-30 goes with, 8 bombs of 500 kgs. That grid will not come back for the rest of the war. I'm just trying to tell you, this is the difference between the two. So, yes, this is the best that the Iranians can do. And they were trying to create a large, casualty rate for the Americans. But they have not been able to, are successful in that. So Americans are carrying on doing whatever they want till the time they feel that they have achieved their objective.
One interesting aspect, since you mentioned the drones, Chief Dhanoa, is that, the Americans have now gone to Zelensky in Ukraine saying that, the Shahid drone that the Iranians seem to have an unstoppable supply of, that has turned out to be a real menace and a bit of a nuisance. Like you said, these drones are able to get through some of those defenses and hit some of the high-value bases in Bahrain, etc. What do you make of that, sir? A superpower like America asking Ukraine for help in how to counter these Iranian drones.
See, first of all, drone is a threat if you don't have the right weapons for it. That is all. The question is, like in our case, we have been using, Air Force has been using combat drones in 2001. In 2015, we got the A1 from the Government of India for close-in weapon systems. What is difference between a close-in weapon system as compared to a normal AD gun? It has got something known as a smart ammunition. And what is the smart ammunition done? Smart ammunition is like a shotgun. Like how do you kill birds who are flying with a shotgun? You put a spray of pellets. Similarly, the smart ammunition, the round is programmed to go and explode on the face of the target. So the smallest of drones will be taken out. Why did Ukraine smuggle so many drones in a truck into Russia and then got their bases? Why small drones? Because with the bigger drones, their air defense systems would have taken them out. And the Pantsir system would have been able to take it out. But what Pantsir does not have is smart ammunition. So they came with small drones and put them in a truck. It also shows the Russian policing has failed. Can you imagine anybody getting a truck full of drones in India?
Yeah.
Our police will ensure, 100% ensure this will never happen. So the Russian policing failed. So they got these small drones, and of course, thereafter the Russians didn't have any weapons to take out these small drones. So it is just that they don't have the right weapons. And laser, like some people are reporting, the Americans started using laser. I think if the laser is successful, then of course that will swap all the drones. So what are the Ukrainians doing? Ukrainians also improvised. Because they are on the battlefront. First person view with drones, which are very small drones. So they have improvised. So the Americans are going to learn lesson from them how to improvise. Because like everybody else, the Americans have also done away with their 80 guns. They thought total reliance on very good and sophisticated missiles is the ultimate answer.
Do you think those sophisticated weapons have been validated in this war, sir? Many of those weapons are being used in combat for the first time. Some long-range weapons. You had the F-35 score. It's technically its first air-to-air kill yesterday as well. All of these frontline modern weapons, as it were, are seeing this kind of combat for the first time. In 1 week of combat, as a veteran pilot yourself, do you think they've been validated?
No, they've been fairly successful. The very fact that the Iranians have not been able to shoot down a single aircraft, it means that they have been very successful. There is no doubt on that. But my only contention is that this kind of a thing which comes new in the scene, initially it will create a lot of ripples and but after some time, the systems will be developed to counter it. You can't say, a lot of people say that why do we need manned aircraft, the drones will do the job. Drones will not. Drones will not survive in a thick air defense environment, as it was proved in Op Sindoor.
Finally, one final question, Air Chief Dhanoa. Air Force is watching what's going on between the US, Israel and Iran right now. Are there lessons for global air forces in what they're seeing play out? They've already been watching what's been going on between Russia and Ukraine. But this particular war is seeing frontline aircraft, pronounced use of air power as well. Are there lessons, including for the Indian Air Force?
Of course, there are lessons. Every conflict that takes place, it is studied in detail. I remember when the Yugoslav conflict took place in the Kosovo thing, I was that time in the Air Force, I was the wing commander. We had sent a team there just to find out how had they managed to surprise the Americans many a times, including shooting down of their stealth fighter. So any conflict that takes place, all the air forces look very carefully for what lessons are being learned so that they can implement. They don't have to do the same mistakes again. I'm sure the Air Force is doing it. I'm a veteran. I'm speaking to you as a veteran, retired 6 years back. So I can only say what I see on the newsreels like you. I don't have any intelligence inputs with me.
No, absolutely. But, just on a personal note, Air Chief, before I let you go, you've been a war-fighting chief of the air staff, and you've watched the use of air power in Operation Sindoor. Now you're seeing it happen in Russia, Ukraine. You're also seeing it now in this live war situation in the Middle East. How does that make you feel as someone who has always advocated the primacy of air power? It is clearly the center of any future battle and current battle, sir.
It is the center of the battle. It is the opening. I'll say the opening gambit of any battle is air battle, and you have to win that. It is not the center. Like suppose you want to liberate Bangladesh, Air Force can't do it.
Yeah.
They wanted a regime change in Iraq. They had to put boots on the ground. To think that, I don't know, my personal opinion that if you get will you get a regime change through only air power? I doubt it. Unless there are some people on the ground who are going to rebel and, a general is going to break away or something. I don't think so. Air power is not the answer. But air power will always be the opening gambit, and it will be quite decisive. If you don't win the air battle, like General Montgomery said, you will lose the war and you lose it quickly.
Well, air power was the opening gambit in this battle. 1 week later, air power continues to be, front and center. Your words about how boots on the ground are going to be needed for any kind of regime change, we'll have to see how that works out, because as of now, this story is still very much in motion 1 whole week later. An honor to have you, Air Chief Dhanoa. Thank you very much for your time tonight here on NDTV. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, more breaking news coming in. 7 days on, we can confirm here on NDTV that the war is only growing in intensity in terms of the sheer number of airstrikes and missions that are being conducted on a daily basis. 50 Israeli fighter jets have rained fire on Tehran just today. We've got a confirmation on that from the Israeli Defense Forces, which means that the tempo of operations has not slackened even slightly a whole week later. In fact, today, a big mission was conducted where the Supreme Leader of Iran, Khamenei's underground bunkers, the remainder of his residential compound, were destroyed in precision bunker buster strikes by the Israeli Air Force with the help of intelligence. Underground bunkers built for the Khamenei were decisively destroyed in one of the most shared videos coming out from the combat 1 week later. And I want to show you this video just a little bit more closely. I'm going to put it up over here. This is a video of the residential compound of the Khamenei where the missiles actually hit. But before that, Iran rains missiles on Israel as well. This is the other side of it. On NDTV's camera, we've been able to capture today, Aditya Raj Kaul, our colleague on the ground, captured the Iron Dome doing its daily job, intercepting more incoming projectiles. This is on NDTV's camera just earlier today. So those interceptions are happening absolutely non-stop. Let's go straight to our guest tonight, live from Tel Aviv. Shosh Bedrosian, spokesperson for the Israel Prime Minister's office, is live with us here tonight on India Matters. Shosh Bedrosian, good to have you. Thank you for your time here on NDTV. 1 week into this war, a roaring lion, can you give us your assessment of how you think the war is going? 1 week later, that's a pretty long time for an operation of this kind. And from the looks of it, the intensity hasn't slowed down even a little. Shosh, good to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Well, we've seen enormous success, and I'll bring you back to 1 week ago on Saturday morning. Within the first 40 seconds, we eliminated about 40 senior Iranian officials, including the Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei. I can tell you officially that the main IDF achievements that we've had since the beginning of the operations is that we've neutralized about more than 60% of missile launchers, which has created difficulties within the Iranian system. We've really cracked this regime so far, where they're having a difficult time actually communicating with each other. Like I said, we eliminated about 40 different Iranian senior officials. These are wanted terrorists, including Ali Khamenei, and we've achieved aerial superiority over a decent amount of Iran at this point in time. I can also just want to reiterate at this point that the relationship between Israel and the United States is absolutely unprecedented. The fact that our troops from both of our countries are working hand in hand to annihilate this threat, this massive threat that the Iranian regime poses to both of our countries, and we are doing it together in full coordination with our governments, with our military, and we are seeing enormous success to eventually create the conditions to help the Iranian people leave this oppressive regime.
Shosh, the fact that 50 Israeli fighters were in the air conducting those strike operations even a whole week later would suggest that the tempo of operations hasn't gone down. Would that suggest that there's a lot more work to be done? And the reason I ask is because one of the big questions is how long more will air power be imposed in this battle? It doesn't seem to be slowing down at this point.
Well, the Prime Minister said that this could certainly take some time. Remember, we're not dealing with a small country here. Yeah. Iran has about 90 million people. And unfortunately and tragically, the Iranian regime has built their country up to have terror targets all over it. The Iranian people have been forced into this for 50 years at this point in time. About 1979, Khomeini came to power, and that's when his people became forced into this regime. basically no women's rights, no freedom of choice. They've lived in economic despair, not having the ability to access food, electricity, and water. And so this is a massive problem. It's a large-scale problem. And systematically, we need to take down this Iranian regime and its military targets, specifically its ballistic missile capabilities and its nuclear capabilities as well. Once we eliminate that threat, that imminent threat that it poses to both of our countries, the United States and Israel, as I mentioned before, we will then create the conditions for the Iranian people to take matters into their own hands and to finally get that democratic society they have been dreaming for 47 years.
What conditions would need to be met on the ground? Since it is pretty clear that Iran continues to have at least some kind of a limited defense and offensive capability. They're still sending missiles towards your country. Our cameras in Tel Aviv did capture some of those interceptions in the air. What conditions, Shosh, would need to be met on the ground, for the military campaign to end and then the regime change process to start?
To remove this Ayatollah regime, the regime must go. It has to go. It's been oppressing the people for far too long. And in fact, the Ayatollah regime has created terrorism throughout the region and has posed that major threat. So we're talking about nuclear capabilities, ballistic missile capabilities, in addition to the terrorism that surrounds the state of Israel. Right now, we are also battling Hezbollah. Who is Hezbollah? It is a terror proxy of the Iranian regime, funded and trained by the Islamic Republic itself. And they have chosen to also enter this war. We need to take down this threat immediately, which our brave soldiers are doing as we speak, in addition in Tehran. So it's getting this regime totally out of the country so that the Iranian people can have the chance to take their future and to have it into their own hands for the first time in 47 years. And I just want to underscore who the Iranian people are. They are brave. They are talented people who have tried to stand up to the regime. But what has happened when they have stood up? They have been annihilated. They have been massacred. They have been murdered in the streets. And your viewers probably saw this in January and in February. These protests that took place in Tehran and all over the country in Iran, they were rising up because of the state, the economic state their country was in. It was absolutely crumbling. And they chose to stand up, rise up. And what happened? About 30,000 protesters were mowed down and murdered by their own government. I just remember those horrific videos of people in body bags, shots being fired. And these are people simply just trying to exercise their right to change their government, to take out this regime who has brutally tortured them for 47 years now.
Are you concerned, Shosh, that an extended military campaign will precipitate a humanitarian crisis or a problem in Iran? There have already been instances of schools being hit. We've seen the story from Mimab where 160 young students and teachers were killed. Those pictures have been viraling around the world as well. Your view on that, it was understood to have been an American strike that created that. But in general, a humanitarian crisis as a real challenge.
Sure. Well, and just in terms of that incident that you mentioned, we know the Americans are investigating that. But truthfully, the only reason why anyone even knows about that is because it was propagated in IRGC media, the Iranian state media, which is an arm of this Ayatollah regime. And we know that about 30% of Iranian outgoing missile fire actually fails. So it's under investigation at this point in time. But you mentioned, could there be a humanitarian crisis inside of Iran? Well, there is already a humanitarian crisis inside of Iran, and it's been going on for 47 years. People without rights, people without basic necessities, people trying to speak up, but unfortunately they're getting hanged in public squares. They're getting murdered just for speaking out and doing certain things, not wearing their headscarves or their head coverings. This has been absolute despair. It's been brutal for the Iranian people, and it's been a humanitarian humanitarian crisis. By removing the threats of the Ayatollah regime, what will happen is that there will finally be stabilization in this region. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that if we accomplish this mission, which we are doing right now, and this operation, we could usher in an era of peace we have never seen before in the Middle East. And the first step to that is removing the Iranian regime.
One final question, Shosh, that, President Trump has indicated today that, he doesn't have a timeline on his mind. He's committed to this war, this campaign, until the right conditions are met. He's said that he would like to play a part, in who chooses the next supreme leader. He said, make Iran great again as well. How does Israel feel about that? An extended campaign until those conditions are met?
Well, the prime minister has said this is not going to be an endless war. This is an operation that will hopefully and is appearing to show us that we are taking out the Ayatollah regime. The prime minister has also made clear he wants to have the Iranian people finally be able to choose their destiny and finally able to choose the future that they want, hold democratic elections, and to be able to take their lands that they love so much and flourish inside of it. And the prime minister has made that very, very clear. In terms of the Americans, I want to reiterate the relationship that we have with them. Our leaders are speaking on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, every step of the way in full coordination with each other, shoulder to shoulder, fighting with each other in the air, which we have never, ever seen before. Yeah. So we are in unprecedented times and historical moments together.
Shosh Bedrosian, thank you very much for your time and speaking to us tonight here on NDTV. Thank you, Shosh.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, more breaking news coming in. President Trump's Iran war cry has escalated. He has said unconditional surrender are the only terms that he is willing to agree to. Trump says, make Iran great again. He's made that pitch. There will be no deal with Iran. He doubles down on the campaign against Iran as the war rages on. There will be no deal with Iran except an unconditional surrender. After that, and the selection of a great and acceptable leader or leaders, we and many of our wonderful and very brave allies and partners will work tirelessly to bring Iran back from the brink of destruction, making it economically bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. Iran will have a great future. Make Iran great again, or MEGA, says President Donald Trump. His latest words on the entire campaign against Iran, one whole week since Operation Epic Fury actually began. And I want to show you a picture that's been going viral from the White House right in the middle of this war. This is that picture, viewer. This is a picture of Trump hosting pastors in his office, in the Oval Office, seeking divine help amidst the war. It's a surreal picture of President Trump sitting hunched at his table with many of his senior staff and many pastors there, some of them with their hands on his shoulders, touching his arm, all in a prayer, a divine invocation of sorts. You can make what you will of this, viewer. I have my own thoughts about it, but this is a picture that has polarized and angered and inspired many. It's divided the entire world, this one little picture of Trump praying with pastors inside the Oval Office. And I'm joined tonight here on India Matters by Michael Owens. He's the mayor of Mableton, Georgia, and a former chair of the Cobb County Democratic Community. Mr. Owens, good to have you. Thank you for your time here on NDTV. I wanted your opening thoughts and words on what the President of the United States has just said, unconditional surrender. He doesn't have a timeline in his mind, and that this war will continue until Iran lays down its arms and the United States and its allies in the region have a chance to sit together and decide what happens next for Iran. Michael, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I definitely appreciate being on tonight. That picture was quite interesting. I'll say it that. But it's also, the concern is where we're going to go as a country for the United States and where this war is going to lead us to. The real question is not, is Iran dangerous or not? We know that they are, We understand that. Everyone agrees on that. But the question is really, what is the long-term plan? You know, the American people, the world for that matter, deserves to know what the strategy is around this. I mean, now Trump has finally says that there is going to be unconditional surrender, but we don't even really know what that means. You know, we're trying to deter Iran, topple a regime, stabilize the region. You know, those are three very different wars. You know, the administration has already given multiple explanations, you know, to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, destroying their military capabilities, and now talking about achieving regime change. Those are different commitments that we're asking of our troops and of others. And I think war without clarity, this is an objective that could potentially lead to an endless conflict. And I think that's what a lot of people are really concerned about.
Yes.
We have historical reminders of this, right? We know what happened with the Iraq War, the mission creep we saw there, the 20-year war in Afghanistan, the Libya regime change that led to long-term instability. You know, we cannot fight another open-ended long-term war in the Middle East where the goalposts keep shifting, the goals keep shifting. That is the big concern.
Are you concerned, Michael, that you know, regime change being the desired outcome in Iran, according to Donald Trump, will mean boots on the ground? Because that is pretty much what every serious commentator and analyst actually says. You can't have effective regime change of the kind Trump is advocating unless you've got soldiers on the ground.
Now, ultimately, I do believe that. However, I will say that times have changed. Warfare has changed.
Yeah.
Cyber warfare has had a lot to do with it. So, you know, we have drones, and there's, again, cybersecurity aspects to where you can infiltrate and cause not only cyber issues, but you can actually impact kinetic war and have physical destruction through cyber attacks. So the landscape has changed. But again, to have what he is now determining, I don't think that's possible without having boots on the ground, without committing our young men and women to go on foreign soil and fight. And I think that's something that, again, going back to strategy, what is the goal? You can't say on one hand you want to have unconditional surrender and take over a country, and on the other hand, not commit troops to the ground. I think that's almost impossible, even with the technological advances and the change of the modern day battlefield.
How long more do you think this campaign is going to last, Michael, in that case? Because, you know, Trump has given an interview today saying that he doesn't want to think about a timeline. He's thinking about an outcome. You know, how long more do you think, you know, Trump can justify this campaign? Because you know, the body bags are piling up. There is a humanitarian crisis that will become very visible from Iran very soon. How long do you think this can carry on for?
I don't think anyone really knows. And I don't think that Trump has really laid this out as to what those plans are going to be. You know, this is not World War III, but it's absolutely could spiral into a wider, broader regional war if diplomacy continues to just not be at the forefront. The concern is other countries getting into this. Obviously, Iran attacking a potential NATO country, invoking Article 5, and putting more and more countries at risk of being drugged into a full-scale regional war. And I think that is a concern. That is going to get, if that happens, that's out of President Trump's hands. And I think that, you know, a lot of attention has to be paid to what the possibilities are, because not knowing what Iran's moves are going to be, not knowing what other actors in the region or even outside of the region may do to further complicate this.
Michael Owens, it's been good to have you. Thank you very much for your time here on NDTV.
Thank you.
And coming now to the irony of the week. A week into the war in the Middle East, the United States, the most powerful military on earth, waging a war that Donald Trump has explicitly framed as a reminder to the world of American military supremacy. He has had to quietly go hat in hand to Ukraine, war-torn, battered, bled dry Ukraine, for help. Specifically, help with Iran's low-cost Shahid suicide drones. Now let that sink in for just a moment, because it's important, and I want you to pay close attention to this, viewer. This is a man, Trump, who called Zelensky a dictator, who said Ukraine should never have let the war start in that country, who strong-armed him in the Oval Office on live television just a few months ago, who has treated Ukraine as a nuisance, a beggar, a burden. And yet, Zelensky's forces have spent 4 years being pulverized by the very same Iranian Shahid drones that are now perplexing and befuddling the American war machine over the Persian Gulf. 4 years of being swarmed, adapting, innovating, building layered, low-cost, high-efficiency counter-drone networks, combining mobile jamming units, ground-based gunnery, acoustic detection, and coordinated interceptor drones that don't waste expensive missiles on cheap munitions. Ukraine hasn't just figured out how to survive Iran's feared Shahid drones, but literally decoded how to handle them. The Americans actually reverse-engineered the Shahid from wreckage collected in Ukraine. That's the amazing irony. Quietly boasted about deploying the result, their counter-drone clone called the Lucas, against Iran. And they figured out how to copy that drone, but they forgot how to figure out how to stop it. This is not a small oversight. Some would even call it hubris, the hubris of a superpower so dazzled by its own shock and awe, its B-2s, its Tomahawks, its carrier groups, that it lost sight of what every honest soldier knows. Wars are decided often by the most rudimentary weapons wielded with the most ruthless patience. Now, those Shahid drones being fired by Iran have done more than evade American air defenses. There is credible reason to believe drone swarm have sown enough confusion over Kuwaiti airspace to contribute to fratricide, allied pilots in the fog of war, indulging in friendly fire, firing on each other. American fighter jets have been lost, 3 F-15s on Monday. The drone Iran has mass-produced for under $20,000 a piece right now, costing the world's richest military in blood, metal, and now pride. That's why they've had to go for help. And so Trump, the most give-a-damn cocky war president of the modern era, finds himself seeking counsel from the very man he humiliated not long ago. It turns out when the drones won't stop coming, you call whoever knows how to make them stop. Zoom out and the picture is remarkable, because for all the braggadocio, for all the flags and the fire and the presidential proclamations, the world's preeminent superpower has overwhelmed Iran. There's no doubt about it. But it is not above learning from a nation that has repeatedly condescended to. But here's what this really tells us, beyond the irony, beyond the politics, the fact that this is where the US needed help. That is counter-drone warfare, is the most significant detail of this week. And I say this without any doubt in my mind, as someone who's been tracking every aspect of this warfare every single hour. Not the airstrikes, not the carrier deployments. How to counter Iran's simplest drone is what America needs help with. Unmanned combat is not the future of war, it is the present, it's happening now. And India knows this. And the nation that masters the small and cheap and the relentless will master the battlefield. It is certainly setting terms in this one. Amidst the shock and awe, the missiles and the lasers, it's the little things that tell the bigger story, like they always do. I want to show you, and I want to remind all of our viewers, because we're talking about a story where President Trump has had to knock on Ukraine's door for help with anti-drone formulas and anti-drone know-how to tackle Iran's Shahid drones. Well, here's a good reason why Trump is looking for Ukraine's help, because they've mastered the art of dealing with drones. Take a look at this, the Black Sea attack on the 5th of March 2026. Maritime and aerial drones attacked a gas field in the Black Sea. A Russian Kamov-27 helicopter was destroyed in this particular attack. Rewind just a few weeks to December 15th last year, a first of its kind naval drone attack on a Russian submarine, where a Sea Baby naval drone knocked out a Russian submarine practically out of service while it was in its berth. Then on the 1st of June 2025, it was something called Operation Spiderweb. The world will never forget it. The largest drone attack on Russian air bases to date. 117 drones, remember this story? Launched from trucks which had been smuggled into Russian territory. The impact, 5 air bases struck, a dozen Russian aircraft, bombers really, completely destroyed by these first-person view drones, which were practically like a video game. You remember this video. April 5th, 2024, mass airbase assault. A barrage of drones targeted 4 Russian air bases. The impact, 6 aircraft destroyed and 8 were damaged. August 30, 2023, just over a year after the conflict began. This was at the Pskov airport. A wave of strikes by drones destroyed 2 aircraft. May 3rd, 2023, the Kremlin drone attack, also one of the most famous, a highly symbolic attack where 2 drones exploded over the Kremlin's dome. This became the face of Ukraine's audacity and its deployment of drones and taking them directly to the adversary's camp. So why has the United States gone to Ukraine for help to handle Iran's Shahid drone? The United States is a superpower, right? Why do they need Ukraine's help? Well, here's how Ukraine has dealt with Shahid drones that were used by Russia. Russia had imported them from Iran and used them. Here's how Ukraine has handled it. Through AI interceptors. Look at this. They send out counter drones to hit the Shahid drone in the air. So they actually send drones to smash into the Shahid drone in the air in this manner. And these have been very, very successful because the Shahid doesn't move very fast. Number 2, through AI-powered turret guns. So you've got guns on the ground which are trained by AI. AI powers their targeting systems, and these lock on to those Shahid drones and they automatically start firing to bring those drones down. Incredible power. And remember, the Shahid drone is not so big, so it can be easily brought down. 3, through AI-powered mobile firing units. These are manned firing units that are capable of quickly latching on. Slow-moving Shahid drones don't stand a chance when they are locked on. Number 4, through AI-powered drone hunting aircraft. You've got slow-flying aircraft hunting slow-flying drones, and they just simply follow them the old-fashioned way. No AI here, just visual range, see the drone, fly close to it, and smash it either with a missile or a gun. So this is very, very rudimentary stuff, but the Americans needed to knock on Ukraine's door to say, please help us figure out how to handle these drones because they are proving to be a real nuisance. Vishnu Shom tells us more.
The offer of the Ukrainians to actually help the Americans deal with the Shahid drone, which is used en masse by the Iranians, it is an Iranian drone, is quite significant. Versions or variants of the Shahid drone itself has been used for quite a few years now, at least the last 2, in the war between Russia and Ukraine. They are incredibly effective. They've caused a great deal of devastation, and this continues to represent a threat in the war in the Middle East at this stage. The Ukrainians have technology to counter the Shahid drone, whether it's jamming, in other words, jamming of radar frequencies, of radio frequencies, or jamming in other ways, and certainly the ability also of late to physically intercept these drones using small drones. So there are a wide variety of options. Jamming a drone, ensuring that it doesn't get to its to the target that it's meant to hit by launching smaller drones which can actually latch on to the attacking drone. These are things that Ukraine has experienced and perfected in the battlefield, and this technology may now be available to the United States.
From Ukraine and Iran, I want to take you a little south of Iran to the Persian Gulf, and more specifically now, the Strait of Hormuz, which has turned into an absolute tinderbox. Now, the NDTV Data Fight team, which powers much of our coverage here on NDTV, has put together some information that paints a very, very scary and unsettling picture of what could happen in the Strait of Hormuz, through which a large part of the world's oil flows from the Persian Gulf. Global oil supply could be in dire straits. It is a very, very serious situation. It is not an exaggeration. Over 700 oil tankers, the giant ships you see carrying millions of tons of oil, are stranded in the Gulf because they cannot pass through the Strait of Hormuz. One single missile, one single drone hitting some of these ships that are stacked very, very close together at this point of time could easily, potentially trigger a chain reaction or a huge explosion in the region. Imagine millions upon millions of tons of oil and some kind of a detonation, meaning a vast tragedy or a disaster. Now, let me just show you what it looks like right now. Oil tankers are a floating tinderbox because dozens of them are clustered very close to the Strait of Hormuz. This is the Strait of Hormuz right now, And all of the red points you see right now are basically oil and gas tankers. Missile and drone attacks are marked in yellow. So you've already had those missile and drone strikes on some of these tankers. Remember, Iran has already claimed that it has hit 10 of these. Just look at how closely stacked together they are. This is, of course, a zoomed out picture, a map picture, but a small little detonation very close to one of those ships, if it's close to many others, will mean a chain reaction. Drone strikes have erupted across the Gulf, and the NDTV Datafy team is telling us that this is a situation that could become really, really scary. Then I want to show you what Dammam, Bahrain, Qatar, and Doha look like. This is what the marine traffic in those areas look like. As a result of the blockade in the Strait of Hormuz, you've got ships basically piling up over here, which is otherwise supposed to be a pretty streamlined course of communication, a ship line of communication. You've got oil and gas tankers marked in red. Green depicts the cargo vessels. The brownish orange is fishing boats. The blue is tug and special craft. And the purple and grey are others. Just look at the number of gas tankers, as oil and gas tankers and tug and special craft. It is an absolute crowd there in Qatar, Bahrain, and Dammam. Now I want to show you Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, two of the biggest oil producers in the region. Just look at that absolute mass of ships and boats over there. If you zoom in further, you will see that these ships are actually not very far apart, and the reason for that is less than ideal. It is the blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. So this is a situation that could very soon spiral out of control if Iran, a desperate Iran, an increasingly volatile Iran, chooses to attack some of these ships to reinforce or enforce its prohibitory orders on any ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. Now I want to show you Fujairah in the UAE, Dubai and Abu Dhabi, which also straddle the Strait of Hormuz. The situation is not very different. Again, a mass swarm of ships just stuck over there because of that blockade. Remember, Iran has said US, Israel ships and European ships cannot pass through. Everything else can pass through. So presumably, many of these ships are headed towards Europe, Israel, or the United States. So this is a situation I wanted to bring to your attention. Okay, fresh reports have emerged in the tragic story of an attack on a girls' school in Minab in Iran on Saturday that claimed more than 160 lives. International media reports indicate that it is likely that American forces were responsible for this particular airstrike. A report in the New York Times indicates that the school building was severely damaged by a precision strike that occurred at the same time as attacks on an adjacent naval base operated by the Revolutionary Guard Corps. No matter what, these are the horrors of war. This is what is left of the Shajar-e-Tayyab Bey Girls' School in southern Iran. What was meant to be a normal school morning turned into one of the deadliest civilian attacks of the war. Witnesses say a precision strike tore through the school's roof, collapsing concrete onto classrooms filled with young students. Within minutes, the building became a scene of chaos. Iranian officials say at least 160 children and staff were killed. Funerals across Minab have turned into massive public mourning, parents clutching photographs, searching for answers. Satellite imagery reveals a crucial detail. Right next to the school, an Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps coastal missile base. Military analysts say the strike likely targeted the base but hit the school instead. For days, Washington denied responsibility.
The Department of War is investigating this matter, and I would just tell you very strongly, the United States of America does not target civilians, unlike the rogue Iranian regime that targets civilians, that kills children, that has killed thousands of their own people in the past several weeks.
But now, US military sources say it is likely American munitions caused the strike. The Pentagon says the investigation is underway. In Iran, grief has quickly turned to anger. Crowds fill the streets, chanting against the United States and Israel. But for families here, geopolitics means little. Their daughters never made it home from school. As the Pentagon investigates what went wrong, the ruins of Shajar-e-Tayyab school stand as a grim reminder of the human cost of war. A tragedy that could shape the course of this conflict. Bureau Report, NDTV. And on NDTV, we take war very, very seriously. There is no scope for sensationalism. There is a huge amount of misinformation and fake news doing the rounds, which is why we double down to make sure we try our best not to add to the noise, but to give you the facts in an unfolding global scenario. And that's something we will continue to do. Thank you very much for watching. See you at the same time tomorrow. Up next, Buck Stops here with Padma Judges.